said, I'm doing a performance audit, whether you like it or not. The auditor state has that type of power as the final watchdog for the people of Ohio. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And if the Attorney General refuses to find cause, does the auditor have a choice from there?
The biggest thing, I'll tell you, in politics, and again, I don't want to I'm not trying to feed it back to you folks. The biggest thing any political leader has or any political group has, and I don't care whether you like it to label politics or not, that's what these Tea Party organizations are to a certain extent. I mean, you're advocating for ideas, is a bully pulpit, is a voice, it's the megaphone. So if the Attorney General decides not to follow up, then the auditor state, if there's really that type of disagreement, has the ability to keep pounding the desk. Do they have the ability to go in and prosecute? No. No, and frankly, in my opinion, they shouldn't. I mean, that's not, that's part of the separation of powers. That's part of, letting this profession be this profession, that profession, that profession. But if there's really that type of disagreement, the auditor state has every right to continue to pound the desk and make a scene out of it. And that, I'll tell you, that's what I meant by not principled in victory versus not principled in defeat. The power of the written word and the spoken word is extremely big. It's bigger than most of us give credit for, and I think it's partly because many of us feel like, what does one voice do? I mean, how often do we hear that? Well, if you're the auditor state, that one voice is pretty loud and powerful, and the press is going to pay attention. But let me not make this class warfare. Regardless of what position you have, if there's enough people that step up to the plate and say, this is a problem, you know how it goes. Eventually it starts to become an issue, and people start to pay attention to it. And that's exactly what you folks are doing. So, who else? How about a tough one? You have a tough one?
Sure. Mainly because I don't know if it's a tough one or not.
No,
so
okay.
I think
I don't care if it's tough.
Mary Taylor instituted a lot of changes in the auditor's office, many of which I'm sure haven't come to fruition yet, and we may not even know about them. Of those issues, which ones do you consider would be the most important in a scheme of being nullified if she isn't there?
Nullified?
Yeah.
Like,
in other words, things she
rid
had
of.
in the pipeline, trying to change the way the auditor's office interacting with the various government
Right.
agencies and the public, as far as disclosures perhaps with the public.
Right.
And now that she's out of the office,
I don't.
you got in.
Yeah, I don't. Let me answer it this way, because I want to be careful, because I think we may be thinking two different things. There's few things, if any, that I have found that she's done that I'd want to stop. There are things I want to expand, if that makes sense.
That's
okay?
more what I was
Okay. I'll give an example of that. And this is all inside baseball stuff, forgive me, but it's the answer to the question. She's expanded or tried to expand the use of independent public accountants. They call them IPAs in the lingo in Columbus, meaning that the auditor state will outsource when it's a safe government to audit. In other words, it's not some high risk. It's some government that maybe has done a fine job of their records for the last 3 years, and there isn't some inherent risk to the audit. She'll allow some local CPA firm that is pre-qualified to come in and do that work. Now, the value to that is efficiency. We all know that government doesn't do anything extremely well, and she recognizes that, and I recognize that. Matter of fact, as a city council member at Huber Heights, I was the one in the back room advocating that we outsource our audit. We were paying, I think Betty Montgomery was the auditor of state at the time, we were paying some, I think, $60,000 for our audit. The local taxpayers pay for that. Now, being in the CPA industry, I looked at it and said, that doesn't feel right. Well, when we went out and bid it, once we got authority from the auditor state to bid it, I think the bid came in at like $40K. So, I mean, is it a huge change? No. I mean, we had a budget of $50-some million annually in Huber Heights, so it wasn't significant, but it was still $20,000 of the people's money, and we still got an audited statement, and the auditor state still signed off on it. Now, that points to two issues. One points to why not continue to allow competition with the auditor's office and bidding those. It also points to there's obviously room for efficiency inside the auditor's office, because if the free marketplace can do it at $40K, why couldn't the auditor state's office? Presumably, they don't have any other of the expenses of, like taxes of a for-profit company, okay? So that theoretically, the government ought to be able to provide that service at a lower rate. But we all know what happens in government. When there's no profit motive, it easily just gets lazy. And so Mary has tried to expand that. And there's several reasons that it's difficult to expand. I won't bore you with that. But part of it's market access and so forth. So that'll be an initiative I try to continue. She's also really kind of asserted her power using the Performance Audit Division more. It's something I will probably continue, if not expand. And I think when I can, I will be looking to market that service even better. I mean, there's not many city manager appointed bureaucrats who want to submit themselves or the government to performance audit. I think really where it has to be marketed is to the governing council or body, the elected leadership themselves, rather than, you wouldn't believe the number of governments out there where the elected leadership really doesn't have an idea what's going on inside the government itself. And I'd say that's one of the biggest problems. It's often ignorance, sometimes purposefully, on the part of the elected official, as much as it is corruption on the part of that elected official, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So those would be two areas that I point to in particular, okay, that I think we can expand and do more.
I have a question. One of the responsibilities you're going to have would be to sit on the state apportionment board. And in the event that Ohio would lose one or two congressional seats, all the district lines would need to be redrawn. Do you have any criteria of how those lines should be drawn? Are you looking at compactness? Are you looking at geographical similarities between? Because in our county of Ashland, we're split in half. The part that I live in, my representative is out of Bowling Green, and that district stretches all the way to Indiana. It's the largest congressional district in Ohio. Whereas the southern portion of the county is out of Canton, and we really don't have very much really to do with Canton either.
This is probably the toughest question I get, just from a practical standpoint. First of all, let me say this. The apportionment board, for those of you that don't know it, every 10 years we redraw the district lines in Ohio. Okay, there will be a lot of political focus post May 4th on Auditor of State, Secretary of State, and Governor. Obviously, good reason for the Governor, because that's the policy side as well. But the Governor, Secretary of State, and Auditor, basically whoever controls two of those three controls who draws the district lines. I'm sure you know that. But the apportionment board actually only draws the district lines for the state assembly, the state house, and the state senate. We're going to be doing that in 2011. So we will only draw the district I'm serving. And now, indirectly, that impacts the congressional districts because the state assembly then draws the lines for the congressional districts. So I'm not certain I'll have a direct role in dealing with the congressional districts, but I'll still answer the question. So why is this so important? Well, we only do this every 10 years, and it's after every census. Of course, the census is about to wrap up, and so we probably will lose 2 congressional seats. The number of state rep seats will stay the same because that's constitutionally driven in Ohio. But then the question is, so what does the district look like? And normally the parties use that to maintain control. Sometimes the parties use that even to defeat people inside their own party that they don't like. And so I will tell you this: if there's an idea that is most important to me, it's compactness or similarity. And I'm not trying to feed back to you. In other words, it's keeping a county all one county rather than splitting it in 2 if you can do it, which you're not going to be able to do in every case. So I'm not giving you some idea that we can do it because you can't necessarily do it.